So with having 3,000 miles and 150 hours on the motor, it is definitely time to get down into the nitty gritty on the repair and maintenance of this bike. Starting with obviously fluids, diff fluid, front rear diff fluid, engine oil, transmission fluid. That's all got to be changed. I'm going to bleed the brakes. And also, this being my first CVT transmission vehicle, I wasn't entirely sure what I should be watching out for. But through years owning this thing and some research, I've noticed that some things have gotten away from me. This right here, I've heard you need to replace this square bushing with a round one. And I am unfortunately too late to the party on that one. It looks like this thing has been eaten into the aluminum. This here secondary, that's junk now. I did go ahead and pick up a primary and secondary from a company called Mother Clutcher. So they're a super, we'll say, affordable company. The only reason why I'm messing around with affordable on something that actually drives this bike is just because I've seen a lot of good reviews on YouTube of other people using them and having good results. So they are just bone stock, and I'll go ahead and give a review on that in, let's say, like 1,500 miles. I'll get back to you and tell you what I thought about the Mother Clutchers. Another thing that I found is, if you watch some of my prior videos, I mentioned how the shifter was loose. It was super loose. It's not so loose anymore. That's kind of a stock wobble to it now. And what was causing it was actually this shift link here. And the original one, this is my new replacement, was made out of aluminum. And I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see that, but it looks like it's missing a tooth, and it is pretty wore out. So that's where all that wibble was coming from, was this. And I went ahead and got one of these. This is made out of steel, the new replacement, so it shouldn't wear out like this one. I went ahead and got that from Jay's Parts. And Jay's Parts is really cool, has a lot of neat stuff on their website for these bikes specifically, including these new foot pads. Well, foot pads, there's nothing wrong with them. I just thought that this was a cool upgrade, so I decided to get one of these too. The next thing is all the joints. All the joints, I've had to tighten a lot of them, especially on the fronts. The fronts seem to be getting looser a lot faster than the rears, so I've been having to tighten them. And I'm pretty sure that they're getting worn out, so that's something I'm going to look into. As well as, I'm going to look into drill and tapping these for Zerk fittings, so that way I could just grease them without having to unbolt them. That would be very nice. I've only done the greasing once. Seemed to have lasted okay, but I wonder how long they would last if they actually had Zerk fittings and I actually could grease them a lot easier and more often. And also the wheel bearings. The wheel bearings are definitely shot. They just don't roll as well as the new bike. That was something I noticed right away when I got the new bike, just pushing it around the shop. Besides the tire differences, it just rolled that much easier, where it was an immediately red flag for me that my wheel bearings are shot on this bike and they need to be done. So that is something I'll be doing as well. Another thing that I needed to do was, if you saw in my prior video, the rear skid plate actually fell off of this, totally off. Thankfully, my dad was following me and he said, "We'll pick it up and bring it back to me." So I still have it, but it is falling off. And what had happened was, those skid plates have been taking a lot of damage. I'll show you over. These things have been through the ringer. Now, they've done their job. They're protected by frame and all the important components underneath them that they needed to, but they are pretty wore out, and with that came a lot of missing hardware when I went to take those off. And as far as upgrades go, I'd love to figure out this airbox a different way, maybe a different style here. I know what this is for. This is basically so water can't just go pouring directly in onto your paper filter on the inside. But it seems to be highly restrictive as far as airflow for a 1,000cc motor, at least I think so. So I'd like to figure out some way of increasing airflow while still keeping the protective nature of the stock equipment. Some of my more loftier goals, like I mentioned with the footwells, I'm not a fabricator, never claimed to be one. This would be my first fabrication project entirely on my own. So these are lofty goals, but I would love to figure out a better front bumper, something a little more protective, and something that still keeps that same really nice departure angle that the stock one has, so that way I could still butt right up to those waterfalls and pop right up on top. But something that's maybe a little taller, maybe a little more aggressive, that would be nice. And the same with the rear bumper. So this doesn't actually have what you would consider a rear bumper. It used to when it was stock, but I left the stock one off when I replaced the rear rack. I would love to add on to this rear rack, maybe create some sort of a bumper type scenario, because when I was in Moab, that was actually some of the damage I took, was those exhaust pipes actually hit the ground. You could still see some of the marring on there. So it'd be nice to create something that could protect those bikes and some of those steeper departure angles.
One eternity later.
So work is continuing on the Black Pearl, and I've started doing the clutch. And like I said, this is my first CVT vehicle, so this is my first clutch job. So I watched a video on it. The secondary came out as easy as everyone said in the video. The primary, I have the mother clutcher here finally, and it came with this puller tool. So this puller tool doesn't seem to be working with my particular clutch. I know they make multiple different styles, and the threads just aren't starting in it. And so I'm going to get a different style of puller soon. But what I wanted to show you was the reason why this clutch kit why I even got one to begin with. And that is, if you look here, you can see how loose and sloppy that is, and you can see this square block and how that is. That isn't supposed to be that loose. It's what happens is this square block creates a lot of friction, and I guess it wears into this aluminum housing. You can see that kind of bend right there. That's not any good. So this is the new clutch from new secondary from Mother Clutcher, and it's got this round rotating bushing right here, and as you can see, that's a lot tighter fitment. So that's how that's supposed to be, and that's what began this whole replacement clutches to begin with. I got good news. I tapped the original primary, used the puller tool, and it worked. Here's the and it worked. Got the original primary off, so now I can put the mother clutcher on there. Ooh. Wow. Something I just now noticed. If I can get that out of there. I've seen people use these as the primary stopper so they can put torque down on there, but apparently theirs are stronger than mine. Uh-oh. Oh well, maybe I'll put this in the opposite way and bend it back straight when I go put it back in. Whew. All right, one more thing down, a couple more to go. Okay, so update on the update. I thought that threading, the retapping went too easy, and what come falling out of the old primary clutch let me know what exactly was going on. So first of all, this came out with the bolt. When I undid the bolt for the primary that holds the primary in, this came out with it. Little nylon bushing. I didn't realize that it was already in two pieces. A threaded bit came out after I got the primary completely off the bike. So given how easy that was to tap, like almost little to zero effort, this must have been what was keeping me from threading my puller tool in. This threaded bit of this nylon bushing must have broken off in there, and that's what was preventing my threads from starting. So I guess the tap was able to grip it and thread it all the way down through the threaded bit of that primary, allowing me to finally use my puller tool. So if you go to do this, don't get caught up by that. Okay, now that the two primaries are out, I could give this thing a better inspection. And the thing that I've noticed mainly is that the original primary had this big groove down here just on this side, and this one doesn't have that groove, so I know it's not supposed to be there. Also, the bushing that's in here, it's the dual way bushing, since I don't have the engine brake, seems to be pretty wore out, especially when compared to the new one. The new one isn't nearly as sloppy in there. So looks like this is a good move, getting a new primary, because as far as I could tell, that's the only way you're getting a new base plate without a groove on there, is to get the entire primary. The thing that's making me a little nervous is that's black spring, and that's like a light purple spring. I'm fairly certain these colors aren't standardized. and I did push on them and they seem to be similar weighted as far as my my hand chronometer goes. But the only problem is the original one has 3,000 miles on it, so it should be weaker. So that makes me nervous about this light purple one. I'm gonna put it in. I've gone too far. I'm not gonna wait for more parts for this, so I'm gonna go ahead and install this anyway, and we'll just see how it runs. Something also got done was I had mentioned how I wanted to do something about this air box and how restrictive the original factory airflow was, and so I did. And what I did was I took two 2-inch 45-degree PVC angle pieces, and I cut them down, glued them together, made sort of a hog nose intake out of this thing. And this is what the original intake looked like. You used to sit down in that hole, and that was as much airflow as you were getting. And I could tell it's made to deflect dust and mud and stuff like that. So I wanted to keep some degree of that still. That's why I have it facing towards the seat. Now I have put the plastics on there and it does clear. Just maybe I might do some drills drilled into the plastic to increase airflow. We'll see. But it's facing this way, so that way if I go through mud, the mud will kind of deflect, the water or mud will might deflect away from the air box instead of going directly down in there onto the air filter. All right, so after multiple days and long hours out here in the garage during summertime, so like today's 109. And I chose today because it's a cooler day. So anyway, after a lot of hot days in here, it's looking like this is going to be a multiple part video because I just keep on coming across more things I'd like to do on this bike before I get it all put back together and back onto the trails. So if you enjoy this, stay tuned for part 2.